And we're back. And Marie from Organize Me, and we are talking all things keepsake. Marie has now moved locations so she can gesture with her Italian hand gestures as much as she wants and not shake the camera. Okay, Marie, so we were talking before about the whole setup to this big keepsake project you've been doing during quarantine. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of exactly how did you tackle it? How did you, you had all these bins and now you're going to launch into this, what could be an overwhelming project, also an emotional project. How did you approach the project?
So first off, all of my bins and all my boxes were in one space. I picked my living room because that was going to be the space that I was going to be spreading out. I had all my supplies ready, my bins that I was going to use, my garbage bags, my Ziploc bags, my Post-it notes, my pen, and I staged my living room to be my workspace. And for me, the timing of it was best to do at night, when everybody was kind of like in their own space and I could just be in the living room on the first floor by myself. So while I was binge watching a show, I decided that my goal was going to be to tackle, when I was really in the groove of everything, my goal was to tackle one box or bin. And when I say a box, it was a banker's size box per day. So even though I might have started my project, later at night, for some people, it might be first thing in the morning. But a solid 4 hours was what I devoted to doing it because, you and I both know too, when we have our organizing sessions, we try not to do more than 4 hours, maybe 4.5, because we know, things take time and people's energy gets, used up. They don't have the patience as much. They get hungry, they get cranky, whatever, and they just can't focus. So for me, that was actually a good affirmation of, or confirmation of what we do with our clients, that 4 hours is a good thing. Me, of course, I would push the envelope a little bit, but essentially when I did have my box that I was going to be doing, I laid out my coffee table, and I have a pretty big coffee table. So as I started emptying out each thing in the box, I had certain categories that basically emerged. And we always say that with our clients too, right? As you're tackling, it could be a mixture of things, as you're tackling things, certain categories will come up. For this particular project, because I knew it was keepsakes already, that was the underlying category. However, within the keepsakes, I categorized them in other groups because I needed to keep it straight in my head. So as I started sorting things out and I saw that there was a category that was coming up, I took my Post-it and I wrote what it was. A great example is the fact that I had different school years for Daniela. So what was very helpful was I had the foresight, and we always give this to moms when they're trying to do keepsakes or keep artwork, is to put their child's name and at least the date or the year of the class that they were in, or what grade they were in on the back. So that was really helpful. So as I was taking things out, I would figure out, okay, Daniela kindergarten, Daniela first grade, second grade. So it kind of all came out. Within all that, there might have been notes that she gave to her friends, or there might have been notes that she received, or like a Mother's Day card or whatever. So even though it was in that school year, I knew that I wanted to pull those out. So I had a separate category. So basically on my table was my sort. And I pretty much kept going through each box and each bin. And then when I saw that there was something for Nicholas, then on the right side of the table was Nicholas's by grade and by type of keepsake that it was. So eventually, by going through each box or bin, I started to have piles. Now, I had done this project a few years back, so I might have had 2 school years within a box for each kid. So then when I had my sort on the table, it was very specific to that. once I started to see that things were getting bulky on my table, I decided, okay, let me take out my unused bin per child. So I had one for Daniela and one for Nicholas. And my thought too, which is what we recommend with our clients, is for each school year, I then used a 2-gallon size Ziploc baggie or hefty baggie. You know, instead of it being a gallon, they make 2-gallon, they make 2.5 gallon, they make
Love those.
3-gallon. They're great, right?
Mhm. I
So
didn't know they existed until years ago when all of a sudden, actually one of our clients had them and I'm like, these are fantastic. Where do you
yeah,
get these? Now I see them more often, but they
yes.
weren't so available back then. But that was like
And you don't always find them in the supermarkets. Like you know, you might have to find them in like Target or like
definitely online you can get.
online or whatever. Yeah, definitely. But so because I had all my supplies handy, and that was that's very important because you don't want to move from your space, right? We always tell people stay in your space, don't move around. If you have things that belong in another room, don't get up from where you are just to bring it to another room, because before you know it, you'll be walking around the whole house and then you'll be distracted and you can't finish.
And you lose energy. And what happens when you lose
Yes,
energy, we need all of that energy to make decisions, especially when it comes to keepsakes. It drains a lot of energy quicker than other projects might. So you don't want to lose energy kind of like walking around. You know,
right.
you want to kind of keep it for what you have to do.
So with realize, I mean, obviously I have older kids, you know, they're not even kids anymore, they're young adults. So being that they're older, I have the luxury of leaving things spread out on my coffee table. However, you know, with me changing the storm door screen and putting the screen in instead of the glass panel, now with the doors being open, I have all this wind that's coming
Oh my gosh.
cross ventilate. So now my things are flying away. I'm like, all right, I can't I can't keep things on the coffee table anymore. So really I needed to, like, as I did each box, um, I decided that I had to put things kind of away, you know. So with that, like I said, I used the Ziploc baggies, the 2-gallon, 3-gallon, whatever I had that I already had. I think I had 2.5 gallon, and I didn't permanently mark the outside because I wasn't sure how much I was going to have. But basically, it was per each grade, I had one bag. So now I was able to take Daniela's kindergarten, put it in the bag. Her first grade, put it in another bag. But her second grade in another bag. But I put a Post-it on the outside. Oh no, I'm sorry. I put it on the inside so that when you look through the little, you know, because it's
Yeah.
see-through, I would know what grade it was. And then I just line them up like I'm filing within my bin.
Mhm.
So so that was really helpful because it gave me a sense of accomplishment, and it made me feel as though I'm getting in my groove. I have things somewhat organized. If I did need to go back to add something to, because that happened too, where as I was going through each box, maybe a different year's keepsake went in there.
Mhm.
So I had to like recreate, but it was easy because now I had the bin right next to me. It was first grade, slid it in like it was a file, and it was done. So as I did each box, and like I said, I'm like 80%, 85% done, but I did all the school things. What I have left are really the notes and the cards and the little trinkets that they bought me and what they might have, you know, shared for each other. You know what I mean? Little cards and notes, and I mean, really cute stuff. Really, really cute stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
And I just want to point out, I want to just recap that, you know, ideally in a perfect world, we wouldn't be doing these projects in your living room, in your main space like that. You know, you're adjusting and adapting to your reality. You know, you
yeah.
don't have a big attic, you don't have you know, a garage that's usable except for that kind of loft space that you have. You don't have a family room, you know. So you
I could use my basement, but my basement is where my husband works, and that's, you know, he has the TV on listening to the news while he's working. So it's like I really don't have a dedicated space, and that's the challenge. Like for a lot of people, you know, it's one thing, and this is something that I wanted to mention before. It's one thing if you could spread out and leave it there. So yeah, even though you walk into my house and you would see my living room the way it was, because of the quarantine, and I knew people weren't going to be in the house, it didn't necessarily affect me that much. But and I don't have small children where they can tackle and touch everything.
Right.
So if that's the case where you have small children, you really need to kind of like, all right, let me do the one box like I suggested, but now put it away and clear off your space so that you can now use it for when the kids come in or whatever. But when it is time for you to do your project, keep those Post-its, spread them out again, and then you're back in business. But it's very important to be able to reconstruct very easily where you were at before. And a lot of times we have said to our clients, right, to write like maybe a little cheat, like a little note, just to say what you're at, what point you're at, and
Right.
what the date was. Because it also makes you realize, like, if a week has gone by or 2 weeks have gone by and you didn't go back to revisit that project, the date's on there, and you really can't make excuses anymore.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you legitimately realize, like, wow, you don't, your mind doesn't remember where you were at, and thank God you wrote that little note, because it brings you back to where you're supposed to be, or where you should be.
Especially when life gets in the way, because sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to continue on tomorrow, or I'm going to continue on like 2 days from now, and you still might have it fresh in your head. But what happens when an emergency comes up or something
Exactly.
unexpected comes up and you actually don't get back to it for a week, a month, a year? Having those little
Or
notes
5 years later.
5 years later, we have the picture to prove it.
Yes.
So when you look back at those Post-its, you don't have to now start back at the very beginning.
Right.
You can pick up where you left off, and you already have kind of a system in place. It's just a matter of taking that little extra time to get reset up again.
Right.
So it's just another way of, it serves multiple purposes, these Post-it notes, in this kind of a project.
Yeah, I mean, so whether you have a designated space that you can walk away from and close a door, or if you have to pack everything away, the idea is to finish the task at hand that you've set out to do for that particular time frame. So that's really key. So once I did my sort and I put everything away, within the categories or whatever, it just made it really easy. And I started to see, like, the fruits of my work, the fruits of my labor. And it was so gratifying.
Okay, so I pulled up my screen. I thought it would be fun to look at some of the pictures of Marie's experience here. So Marie, walk us through, because you've been telling us the story. Let's see some video evidence of what you've been talking about. So what are we looking at here?
All right, so this is when I finally resigned to actually tackling this project, and step one was having Freddie take out what was in the garage, and I asked him to just put it on the deck because I didn't want it in the house yet. I wasn't set up yet in the house of where I was going to put everything. So that's what you're seeing here. And actually, you're seeing not just paper, but also clothing, which ended up being what I tackled first because it was the easiest for me to start to do.
So normally you would have waited till you were ready in the house before you would take everything out, but because he was working on his project.
Yeah, he wanted to, and he gave me that little kick in the ass that I needed, but believe me, this was weighing on me. This was something that, I had to, as we call it, or you call it, in positive psychology, closing the loop. So this was something that I had already, done at one point, but this is now another pass. So yeah, he wanting to, clean out the garage or reorganize the garage because he already has it organized. We needed to make more space. So I asked him to just take it all out, and put it on the deck. So this is not even everything that was taken out. It was just like a few of the things. And because I wasn't ready in the house, I actually ended up, putting tarps over these bins because I knew it was going to rain. And yeah, so that's what I wish I don't think I took a picture of the stuff with the tarps on top of it. That would have been a funny sight because we did have a bout of rain after this. So that's what you're looking at here.
The power of needing to be mentally ready, though. Just because Freddie needed you to get the stuff out temporarily did not mean that you were ready to handle it. So that's why there was a little bit of time.
No. Yeah, I needed to get, because I have an open floor plan in my first floor, I needed to, have all this stuff set up somewhere. And then I also had Daniela that was home, who was doing her art project, and actually she was doing just a paint by numbers that she ended up ordering online. So she took over my whole dining room, which, as you know, isn't very big as it is. So yeah, so I had to be strategic.
And
So this,
accommodating, because your dining room table would have been a great table to use,
oh yeah.
for this, because it's even longer,
Yeah.
you know. No, but you made
Remember when I did the college prep binder?
yes.
That was perfect for that. So this here are the supplies, that really was useful. I think the only thing that you don't see here are the Post-it notes, but those, not only did I use the quart size, which is all the way to the right, the gallon was the next one. I used the 2-gallon and the 2.5-gallon, and then the black bags were my big contractor bags that I used for like just things that were not necessarily paper, but things that, I needed I needed the bag to be a little stronger. And then the then the white regular garbage bags for just normal trash. So it worked out. I ended up not having to use those really big bags in the back, luckily, because that really would have put me over the edge, because all of these supplies then were going into the bins that I allocated for each of the kids.
But you had everything at the ready, which made it very, very easy to you didn't have to get up and pause during the
Right.
project when you needed something.
Everything was right there. And
Oh, and look at it there.
yeah, and you could see the 2 empty bins in the front
Hmm.
of the coffee table. That was part of my gathering my supplies. And what you're seeing here is a work in progress already. I mean, I had gone through some bins already, and because I cleared out some bins, I now have probably a good 6 or 8 empty bins that are in the basement that I can repurpose now, which, by the way, those Sterilite Ultra bins, have been repurposed over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's been great. And then I don't know if you see where the banker boxes are against the red wall. In front of that are the 18-quart bins that we were talking about. So those were specific, actually. I had one for all of Daniela's brownies, like when she was in brownies. Everything that I wanted to keep that were from that time of her life. I mean, she did it for about 3 years, and then underneath it was communion. So not communion, I'm sorry, baptism. So anything that I got, anything that I accumulated. Yep, down one more.
This one.
Yep, right there. Anything that I accumulated for the kids, for both of them. So I actually was able to have all their baptismal stuff in the bin for both.
I like this size for categories of stuff, when you want to kind of have a subset of something.
Yeah.
And that's what I wound up doing. Instead of having one big, bin for school, I had one of these for each year. And knowing completely that I could scale it down now, but at the time that was a perfect size for me. It forced me to make decisions, but I was still able to keep enough where I felt satisfied.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was really cool. And I can see here that you have your Post-it set up.
Yep.
And I just clicked over to the next picture. So
I'm sorry, if you could just go back 1 second.
Yeah.
So on the coffee table is where I have the different sorts. So as I tackled one banker's box or one bin of papers, I just created sorts on my table. So one side was Daniela and one side was Nicholas, and each Post-it was a different school year. So it just kept me on point. And it was like, dealing cards. I was able to just shuffle them all out if I was keeping, and if not, I had a garbage bag. You don't really see it, but where I would be sitting on the couch looking at my TV, which is to the right, hidden from the picture, and the garbage bag would be right there, and the stuff went right into the garbage bag.
That's a good point too, because usually when we're starting with a big pile of stuff that's mixed together and we want to create the sorts, that the first pass is a little bit more mindless in terms of just sort it out. Don't make decisions yet. You just want to sort out what it is And then you can go back and then be, take one pile at a time where you're not worried about the rest of it, and then be a little bit more discerning.
Agreed.
Obviously your initial sort is, okay, what's Daniela's and what's Nicholas's, and
Right.
then, getting a little bit more specific. But that's another way to make it a little bit more manageable, is to not make the very first thing you do a big decision-making thing. It's like, just let's get it sorted out.
Yep.
So even what you're looking at.
Yeah, and and the reason I had the garbage bag, because like clearly if something was like, ripped or ratty, like I knew right away, like it wasn't something I was going to keep. So why am I going to sort it?
Right.
So, and we tell our clients that sometimes too, right? To throw out whatever they think is garbage, or if they think something is ratty, like if they're going through clothes, if something looks ratty, or if it looks worn, or the armpits are yellowing, or like just anything that you're definitely not going to keep, then throw it right in the garbage. Don't even try to donate it.
Right. And again, that's a great way to start without having to spend a lot of energy making decisions, and then you still can see the fruits of your labor, and it'll motivate you to keep going because you'll see the progress that you're making.
Absolutely.
So let me flip to the next picture. So that's about one of the banker's box that you were talking
Yep.
about. Nowadays, you wouldn't probably keep it stored in a banker's box.
No.
This was from like many years ago.
Oh my God, this is from at least, let's see, Danielle's 21 now. This is at least from 14 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, because a lot of it was from, maybe even longer actually, because a lot of it I think is from nursery school. Yeah, because that was another thing too. I tried to do it in chronological order for my own sake, so that I could but I already had it set up that way. You have to remember, so it did make it a little bit easier when I had it that way. But the nursery school, yeah, a lot of this went. There was one thing, and I think you have a picture of it, but I guess we'll get to it later. I won't spoil it. There was one thing I kept, and I took a picture of it,
Mm-hmm.
but with the kids. But anyway,
it's good that we're showing this too, because it could be so overwhelming to think when you have multiple boxes of this, and it's all that, just creating those sorts with those Post-its, like once you get that set up, it's so much easier, and it's so much less overwhelming because you know what you're sorting it into. You get into that groove.
One point that I want to make though is, this is where you think, okay, one small box like this is not going to take me very long. Don't underestimate the time. This one banker's box, remember, was my goal to do each time I was sitting and doing the project. This particular one easily took me about 3 hours to do, because I was watching a show and I was looking at things, and I paused and I took pictures, you know what I mean? So it wasn't, and I was pretty quick with making a lot of decisions, but it really, don't underestimate a small box is all I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done big rooms in less time than it's taken us to do, a couple of boxes of paper.
Absolutely.
An animal.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially sentimental paper, where you're savoring each one and you're
right.
Back. So here's your evidence of how long Marie has been sitting on this project.
Yeah. This was a bag,
right? You got it to a certain point, and then
I did. This was a bag that was I knew it was school work for a particular year, and I guess back in November of 2015, I just lost steam, I'm guessing, or something interrupted me, or something more important was a priority, and I was like, let me at least label it so I could go back to it, thinking I would go back to it maybe a week later, 4.5 years later.
Here it is. But it's all gathered in one place.
Yes.
And so that made it easy. But yeah, these little notes, they kind of give us a little reality check, right?
Yep.
Another example, a more close-up view now of your sorts. So you have Daniela on the left, and then we've cut off a little bit of Nicholas's side.
Yeah, because I was working on her stuff. This one particular box had her stuff, but you can see it was a mixture of kindergarten. It was nursery school, kindergarten, first grade, and then within that, I didn't want to just keep it by grade. There were, little notes and artwork that really I didn't know what, it wasn't for any particular assignment. It was just something that they did that she did in those 3 years. And then I also separated out religion. I was thinking I was going to keep their religion books, but I'm like, who am I kidding? I got rid of them. I think I only kept their sacrament years. I kept, Holy Communion, confirmation, and penance. I think those are the only 3 books I kept.
Mm-hmm.
And only one set, because obviously I have 2 kids. So.
Right. And if you took another pass down the road, if you had to, maybe you would readdress that, or maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't have to, because it's all.
Well, those books are not in the sort that I'm keeping. They're in a box of books. So I probably will. Yeah, it's different. But anyway.
So let's see. Again, now we see a little bit of Nicholas's side before you really got into him.
Well, this is actually now. So if you go back to that other slide, I ended up cleaning all that up this was like after once I finished Nicholas's side, which was the same thing, nursery, K, and first, I put them away in the bins using those Ziploc baggies by year. So I filed all these away. So now my table, when you go to the next slide, my table is now the higher grades. If you can see, Daniela's on the left side. You don't really see her as much, but there was also second grade there, second, third, all the way to 6th, and then the same thing with Nicholas. Yeah, this is clean slate, doing more boxes and more bins. And here's an example of, my kids are going to kill me if they see this, but here's an example of something that I let go that they made in nursery school. It was all the different shapes, and I asked them if they would mind taking a picture, at least as a memory. I actually have a picture of each of them separately as well, but you can see that they're not little babies anymore in nursery school.
Oh, so cute. They're my babies. Here are the bins, which are now fuller, I'm sure.
Oh my God, they're like stacked one behind each other. But you could see like each category that I had on my coffee table, when I went to clean up and start fresh the next time, all I did was I took each category and just put it in the Ziploc baggie. And I left a couple of them open because when I was doing this, when I was taking this picture, I still had things that I was adding. Mm-hmm. So I left it open. But otherwise, I would take out the air, close it up, and the lid went on top. And I just stacked the 2 bins together. So at least I felt like my floor space wasn't so consumed,
I can't wait until mine looks like this. I'm so in the right direction, and I just cannot. This is motivating me. This is like a goal photo for me.
Well, how many times do you come home from a client from doing a job and whatever they were working on that day, you do it in your own home?
I know.
Right?
It's true. Yeah. I need a tune up here.
Yeah.
I love this. So that is Marie's life in pictures.